Well, hello, hello, hello. This is Andy and Devin Lee, and we have to do a mic check because we didn't do that earlier. But we have a special guest in the house today, and that is Jen Baldwin with Find My Past. So excited to hear you guys. It's been quite a while. So, hey, Jen, how are you?
I'm great. I'm exhausted, and it's been a very long week at Find My Past, but a thrilling one. We're just having so much fun with all this. So thank you so much for having us on.
We were just watching you on our other screen, right?
Yeah, I saw your comments on the thread, so that's great. I love it. I love going back and forth between live streams on people. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was funny too because some of the folks here in our live stream were over there too, and they're like, hey, get over here. Yeah, it was really kind of funny to share that. So I want to do a quick shout out to a couple of people here. We've got some new people in the stream. Annabelle Soto from New Jersey is here, and I saw someone from Edinburgh, and I probably butchered it. Where did it go? There we go. We got someone joining us from Scotland. Oh wait, she was part of our trivia game and had done really, really well. She was
the winner. She won first, second, and third place in the 3 rounds.
Yeah. So if you missed the trivia, Jen, you're gonna have to go watch Phil and Bambi and see if you're smarter than Phil and Bambi.
Probably not.
Especially not today.
It's not a very high bar.
Not a high bar.
I mean, you guys were watching the broadcast, right? You see how low we go.
Well, you know. All right. Well, Jen, tell us about the 1921 Census for Wales and UK. It's affectionately called the UK Census, but the official name, I've been practicing, the 1921 Census for I can't say UK. For England and Wales.
England and Wales. Yeah. So it's actually not the UK, right? The United Kingdom is different. That's a different entity. So it is specifically the 1921 Census of England and Wales. I see you guys playing around with the screens here. I can be small.
I'm trying to make you bigger. Okay.
I'm okay to be small.
It did shift forward. It's not making you bigger.
I'm sorry. So we'll just go back here.
Yeah, it's fine. That's totally cool. So on January 6th, which was yesterday, believe it or not, they're all running together. Find My Past launched the 1921 Census of England and Wales for the very first time online and accessible to the public for the first time ever. In England, they have a 100-year privacy rule. I've already seen that question pop up in the chat. It is 100 years restriction. That was implemented by the 1920 census law, actually. So the act was enacted in 1920, and 1921 census obviously is the first one to fall under that policy. So 100-year privacy.
Stop right there. So you're saying that the 1911 and the 1901, they didn't fall under that policy?
That's right. There was a different piece of legal policy that was implemented in 1920.
Were they still waited 100 years to be released? Because I thought that they'd always waited 100 years to release them.
The 100 years is very common and standard in English and Irish and Welsh and Scottish records. But technically, the 1911 census was launched in 2009.
Oh, so I was been lying.
So it's a couple. Yeah, there was a lot in the background there, right? There was a lot of exceptions. It wasn't. I don't think it was supposed to be released, but it was. So yeah. So
that's a good bit of trivia that I can put in the background.
See, the next time you're in a pub trivia situation, you've got it. Yeah.
All right, go on. Sorry to interrupt you there.
That's okay. That's all right. So let's. Do you want to share screen, or do you want me to put slides up? Because I do have some slides.
You can do either one.
Let's do my slides because I found some good examples and some details. Obviously, that I got to click the thing. Here we go, clicking the things. So some really, really good things to know because specifically. UK censuses or English censuses are very different than US censuses. I'm going to let that sit there for a second. Hopefully it will refresh and it will show the right screen. That would be so great if it would do that. Let me try that again.
Technology challenges, we're used to them.
It's going to happen. It is going to happen. You know what? The last time I think I did a session with you guys, I didn't get my slides to load for 20 minutes or something. Do you guys remember that? There we
right.
go. Okay, cool.
Yes, but we're using a different platform this time, so it's
Yeah,
more
I saw that.
interactive.
It's all good now, right?
And it's
Okay.
not your fault that I'm using this one. So
Yeah.
get all the blame.
Cool. So, when we think about the impact of the British, right, the British population, we're really talking about a global impact. For such a small little piece of geography, they actually have really made a huge impact across the world. And the census of 1921 does include a number of locations outside of England and Wales, right? It did enumerate the British population. So you think about British soldiers and sailors who were serving overseas on vessels. You think about people who were stationed or doing a political appointment in India, for example. So it doesn't include the colonies, the Commonwealth, but it does include military and merchant vessels and things like that. So you're really going to find impact kind of across the globe. And of course, we know historically that, the British Empire has a huge impact on kind of English-speaking society kind of all over the world, right? So it's an important census. There were 30,000 bound volumes in this particular census. It's the largest ever taken in England and Wales. 1.6 linear kilometers of shelving. Just to give you a sense of what that actually looks like, that's over half a mile. So I did the math.
Over a mile.
Okay, it's over a mile. It's 11 football fields worth of shelving stacked back to back.
Yeah, 1.6 kilometers.
American football fields, by the way, not 38 million historical records. This is a project we've been working on for 3 years now. Yeah. So it's a big one.
So real quick, 38 million historical records. When you say
people.
that, I guess this is one thing with genealogy, whenever we're talking about a record.
Yeah.
Are we talking each one of these is a family or each one of these is an individual?
38,
or is this an image?
38 million records. So in the Find My Past world, that means there are 38 million people transcribed or indexed from the census.
Okay, perfect.
So is that, pardon my ignorance, that's all the population of Britain was in 1921, was roughly 38 million?
It is the majority of them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was more for some reason.
It is slightly more. They didn't capture everybody. But they did they gave it a real good effort to get as many people as they could. And I'll show you actually a cool example that's different again from the US Census. They even had vagrants captured in the census. And that's not something you see in the US very commonly, right? So so it's incredibly extensive. When we think about the impact in North America and Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, we're thinking about war brides from World War I, home children, right? There was plenty of children sent across to British territories all throughout this period, right? Starting in the late 1800s and going all the way up into the 1960s, actually in Australia. We know that there are a number of cases of return migrants. So people born in England, moved into some other country, came back for whatever reason. Think about for just a second the impact on DNA descendancy testing that the census will have, right? I mean, I am thrilled at the opportunities there. It is really a crucial interwar collection. So the period between World War I and World War II, this is one of the largest collections in the English-speaking population.
I'm getting goosebumps.
I know, it's so exciting.
I got a quick question because we're, in the middle of another pandemic, and this was taken right at the time,
right at the tail end of the Spanish flu. Absolutely.
Was there anything related to that pandemic that was part of the census?
Yes.
People that died or anything like that?
So as a result of the Spanish flu and World War I, they actually changed one of the questions. They actually had captured orphanage status in the 1911 census, but in 1921, they said, fill out how you're an orphan. Is your mother deceased? Is your father deceased? Or are both deceased?
Wow.
So you see that throughout. And we see, of course, this huge difference between female adults and male adults is a vast more males or females. Sorry, there's a bigger gap between females and males, and then you see a huge increase in the number of orphans across the country.
So this is everybody answering that question.
Yes.
So, and I guess for people that are familiar at least with the U.S. Census, we'll have sometimes where you have a parent that's listed as a widow, and then you know that, hey, their wife died, but the kids, when they're grown up, I don't think that we've ever asked, hey, are both of your parents living? Or one of your
Oh,
parents
I
living,
see
or
what you're
anything like
saying.
that?
So that question applies to children 16 and younger.
Okay, 16 and younger.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah.
still, in places where you might not be living with your family, that's great information.
Absolutely.
Because you might be a stable boy in some place that you're living there,
100%.
and it'll tell you whether the parents are living, that you can go and try to find them in the census, or they're not in there.
Right. And we think about orphanage homes, and children's hospitals and other situations, institutions across the country where maybe the man, maybe the husband didn't come home from the war. The wife is left with 7, 8 kids, however many, and she can't actually feed them all. So it wasn't that uncommon to put them into one of those institutions for a short period of time or an extended period of time, and to provide that woman with some relief because she can't feed her family, right? So you see instances of that all over the place. Borders, households taking in cousins and nieces and nephews, and it's rampant across the census.
Wow.
So
That's
just
awesome.
real quick, when you're talking about that, the relationship to the head of household, is that still listed there?
Still
so when
listed.
you have
Absolutely.
cousins living with another family,
Yeah,
it'll show that they're a cousin, but now
right.
it'll also show that their parents are either living or deceased.
Yeah, and it's very clear. It's very important that you make that distinction, right? Don't assume the head of household is one of those deceased individuals, right? Look at all of the information on the census to say, oh, this is a nephew and their parent is deceased.
Wow.
Yeah. The stories are just incredible, right? So let's get into a little bit of the details here. So this is obviously the first time the census has been open to the public. It is available online only on Find My Past. Now, if you happen to be in England, there are 3 libraries across the country that have free access. But for those of us not lucky enough to be there, then Find My Past is the only place to find it. I mentioned earlier, it's been a long-term project. It's a 3-year digitization and conservation project. 38 million people across the census. This is the largest project Find My Past and the National Archives have ever taken on. The digitization, the conservation process alone was extensive and incredible. And we've got some great videos on the Find My Past website, Facebook page, YouTube channel that show some of that process in action. So if you're interested in the conservation piece, do take a look at those videos. If you stretch the census end to end, every page, it would stretch from London to New York. I just really like this graphic and I wanted to use it somewhere. So there you go.
And help for the preservation, though, if we did that.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. Yeah. So this quote is actually from the official pamphlet issued by the Registrar General in 1921, and it really paints the picture of why the census is so important. It's the first census since the war to be taken on April 24th. It is safe to say that this will be the most important yet made in British history. The war has cut clean across every branch of our national life, broken up and disrupted populations, and violently upset all birth, marriage, and death rates, so that there is hardly a single question upon which we can look back to the last census figures for any guidance. If you're looking at the 1911 census in England and Wales and trying to compare statistically to the 1921 census, it's almost impossible. There's been so much change across the world. It's just absolutely amazing. So we've already talked about the effect of World War I, the Spanish flu. England and Wales are in economic turmoil. There's a changing workforce. More women are working than ever before. The picture is actually some of the first known women police forces in the UK. There's a housing crisis happening across the country. So you have 2 up and 2 down flats, right? Two rooms up and 2 rooms downstairs, which are very common in the area. And you've got 8 families living in that dwelling, right? Because there's just no other place to go. Global refugees. We've got unrest in Russia, Poland, all across Eastern Europe, right? With the Bolsheviks, they're starting to take control of Russia. There are refugees flooding into the rest of Europe, and that includes, of course, England and Wales. Women's suffrage is about to happen. Women are about to get the vote in England, and that is a huge social change. And then, of course, later in the decade of the 1920s, you've got what we all think of the 1920s, right? Jazz, flappers, the cocktails, all of this kind of cultural impact that we think of as the Roaring 20s. It's the rise of modern tourism, right? Steamboats were converted during the war to be military vessels and passenger vessels for the military. But then they were going back into passenger travel, and you've got the birth of airline travel happening in the 1920s. So you see more people moving around, more people going back and forth. There's a family I was looking at yesterday that easily had 12 trips back and forth between New York and London during the course of the 1920s. And that just wasn't possible before, right? Mm-hmm. And then, as we've already talked about, war brides, orphans, home children, return migrants, the list of research possibilities just really goes on and on. For those of us who like social history, this is like a dream come true. I could just work on the 1921 census for the rest of my career and I would be totally happy, right? So from a documentation period, right, we've got the 1921 census of England and Wales, which is now available. The 1931 census was destroyed by fire during the war. The 1939 register is an important national collection. It's also available on Find My Past. And then the 1941 census of England and Wales was never taken because of World War II.
So real quick on the 1931 that you say destroyed by fire. We had one in the U.S. that was destroyed by fire, but there's still about 9,000 people.
Yeah,
there's nothing
remaining.
Nothing at all. So
was
you guys had an even worse
destroyed.
one than we had.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And if there was anything left, it was pulped during the war.
Oh. So there might have been, but
there might have been, but it's gone. And then. So when you put this into context, the next major census that will come out of England and Wales in 1951, that is in 2052.
So we're not going to have that on our live stream here anytime
soon. You're not. No, I mentioned that to my dad actually last week, and he said, "Well, you're fine. That's young." He's in his 80s, right? He likes to joke about his age. Anyway, sure, I hope to be around, but I hope to be retired.
The next generation of family history.
Right. They can take that. Yeah. We'll leave that for them. It's like a gift. So a handful of other collections that are really important in this period that are available on Find My Past are the electoral registers from 1910 to 1932. And of course, that's basically voter registration. So you're going to see women start to pop up in that, which is kind of cool. The London Gazette is an incredibly important publication, runs from 1665 to 2018, but that's where all the official kind of government notices were published. Right. So if someone went into bankruptcy, for example, they had to publish in the London Gazette. The passenger list leaving the UK from 1890 to 1960 is a really important collection for those of us researching people who were moving around the world at that time. We do have the largest collection of online of parish records, the largest online collection of British and Irish newspapers, and the largest online collection of U.S. marriages. So if you get into this situation where you're looking at this international experience, Find My Past is a great resource. I couldn't help but, give that pitch for those other records. We do have more than the 1921 census, right? It's really, really crucial to developing kind of this historical picture of life around the world in the 1920s. And you pair it with those newspapers and you've really got an incredible research opportunity. And I personally think that the world of historical academia is going to have a field day comparing the 1921 census of England and Wales with the 1920 census of the United States and the 1921 census of Canada, right? Think about 3 national censuses all taken within months of each other. That's really powerful.
So true. So true. And I just want to interject. I know here on the Family History Fanatics YouTube channel, we've covered the 1939 census, how to use that. We've also
39 register, you mean?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're talking census.
It's not a census, it's a register.
That is correct. Correct. I my faux pas. We did cover the 1939 register, and we also talked about how to what was the other one you said? Oh, parish register.
Yes, parish records. Yeah.
So be sure to check the Family History Fanatics YouTube channel to learn how to use those. We've also dived into how to do social history, since Jen keeps mentioning social history. A lot of those videos are here. So after the stream, maybe I'll get all those links in the description, or just type in Family History Fanatics 1939 register or British Parish Register, and you'll find those videos. So back to you, ma'am.
Cool. All right, so let's look at some stats. Overseas birth locations that we found in the 1921 census. So these are people who were enumerated in the census that were not born in England and Wales. The largest 2 populations outside of the British Empire are Russia and Poland. They're kind of neck and neck a little bit. Of course, the British Empire of India is significant in the census, but that is technically a British territory. And then you see France, Canada, Germany, Australia, South Africa, Belgium, and so forth. These are just the top 10, but keep in mind that we did find individuals that were born just all, quite literally all over the world. The number of individuals born in kind of those English-speaking territories that most genealogists tend to focus on, right? Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United States, range anywhere from around 6,800 in New Zealand all the way up to over 40,000 in the US. So there are over 40,000 people born in the United States living or in England for some reason on the 19th of June, 1921. And then if we look at where those people actually were that night, for Canada, the London area is very popular. Same with Australia, same with New Zealand. United States gets a little bit different. We're staying in the St. George's Hanover Square area, the St. Martin area of London. But, quite obviously, if you're looking for someone who's possibly on vacation or on holiday, you want to be looking at these types of regions first and foremost. Obviously, London's probably the area of London's probably going to be one of those biggest. And then Boston in Lincolnshire happened to pop up as a popular place for the US. And I'm guessing it's something to do with the historical connection, but I haven't researched it yet, so I don't know.
See, I'm wondering you just brought up something that I'm wondering if there's any people or group of people that, want to show up on different censuses. And so they go on vacation on, Census Day in different countries.
I mean, let's do that. We should just plan on that.
I think that would actually be something fun. Because
yeah.
I know I show up in the Canadian census that they took in 1996 because I was living in Canada then.
Right.
And I had to fill out the census form.
Yeah, of course. I do know, and you guys are actually the first people I've told this to. In the census, I know it's exclusive news.
I know.
There is a pair of genealogists from Boston and in London in the 1921 census, and they are there doing genealogical research. And they are actually two of the lifetime members of the New England Historic Genealogical Society. They were famous in their day as genealogists. They wrote several books, most of which has been proven wrong now. But
so we're not going to say who they are.
We're not going to use their names. But I was very excited to see that genealogist is one of the professions in the 1921 census.
Do you know how many genealogists?
I think there were 3 or 4 all told in all of England. That's what they listed as their
and
profession.
2 of them were from the U.S.
And 2 of them were from Boston. That's right.
Wow. I'm just throwing up some success stories on the screen of the
cool
things people have been finding, so we can all enjoy that, as particularly those who watch the replay and don't see the chat. So just so much excitement, and I've also enjoyed all the excitement that's been happening over on Twitter as well. But
oh gosh, yeah, it's been a crazy 24 hours, right? So why would our North American folks be in a British census? Lots of reasons, right? Political appointments. We certainly talk about tourism already, family visits, long-term stays, people who are actually just literally passing through on their way to Europe. There are a number of people who are working to try and find employment. They can't find employment in the US, and so they're leaving the US to go get a job. Economic hardship, of course. And then you think about things like prohibition, right? Prohibition is well in effect during this period. So where did all the bartenders go?
They went to England.
At least one of them did. The bartender at the Savoy Hotel he's British born, but he was in the States for a good 20 years, and he was famous in his own right in New York and Chicago, other cities. And he goes back to England at the start of Prohibition and gets a job at the Savoy. It says on his passport application, because he naturalized as a U.S. citizen, it says that he is only going over for 6 months, but he never came back. He spent the rest of his life in England, and he was famous. He wrote the first cocktail book, or contributed to the first cocktail book ever made, and he was absolutely a favorite of British society at this time because cocktails were new. This was a new thing, a new element to hit cultural and the society, right? And so he's out there shaking all these cocktails in London at the Savoy Bar, and makes him and he had a hugely successful career as a result of that move back to London. So
we could credit him then with the whole James Bond franchise.
I mean, it's possible.
Shaken, not stirred.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a story.
If there had been no prohibition, then our favorite spy would not be a British spy.
And if you look him up in newspapers, he was known to take out this little receipt that he had that was supposedly the last legal cocktail made and purchased in the United States. But we know actually that that's incorrect because he was in New York when he made that cocktail and prohibition didn't start until midnight on the Pacific coast, their time. The law went into effect, I think, on midnight. I actually checked with Judy Russell on this, a legal genealogist, right? And she said there's no actual time as to when that prohibition law went into effect. So everybody would have done it at their local regional time, right? At the stroke of midnight. Because the law didn't specify. So there were arguably cocktails made after his on the East Coast.
On the West Coast.
It was one of my favorite stories. All of this for sure is the Savoy bartender. I think he's great.
I'll get you back. Hold on.
Okay, cool. All right. So differences between the UK and the US. We've already talked about a few of these, but there's a few really important ones to point out. In the UK, for 1911 and 1921 censuses, the household returns were actually sent directly to the household. So there wasn't someone going to door and writing out all this information like we're accustomed to. They were written by our ancestors. So you get the handwriting of our ancestors, you get their signatures at the bottom of the page, you get the family pet in some situations. Oh yeah, we found a whole bunch of dogs, cats, birds. There's a turtle. I think it's actually identified as a tortoise, but it's a turtle.
Yeah. You had mentioned that on the Find My Past Friday live stream right before us. So folks, there's 3 hours of education going on. So make sure you go watch that live stream. It was fantastic to find out all the pets that Miko, right?
Yep, Miko.
So that's in the 1911 that they have pets listed.
1911 and 1921, both.
And 1920, the list of pets. They were asking about the pets?
Nope, they didn't ask about them, but they said to write down every member of the household. And as we all know, some people consider our pets members of our family, right? They felt the same way about their animals. And, there's one sample in the 1921 where you can see the cat paw print across, like he got into the ink and he walked across the paper.
So has anybody done a study of, the 38 million, I'm not for the 1921 necessarily yet, but for 1911, let's say roughly 30 million records, how many of them are pets? Non-humans even?
To be honest, we have a pretty comprehensive list. We could probably get that data pretty quickly, actually.
That would be fun to see, How many dogs are members of the household? So is England a cat place or is it a dog place?
But you remember, not everybody put it on there. Just
but they cared enough to. And so are there more adamant cat people or more adamant dog people?
I personally there's a household that included 2 birds. There are 2 birds. And it says that their occupation was fighting and their residence was moving from perch to perch. And I just thought that's just awesome. And and that's something we don't get in the US on our census, right? So even if you don't have anybody, I don't have anybody in the census. I have no direct ancestors in this census collection, but just flipping through the images is delightful, right? Just to see all of these things. They also captured the physical address of the home. So not the street level, but the actual residence. So 32 Lincoln Street, whatever it was, which makes things like house history and searching by address possible, where it's not necessarily possible in the US. And then, of course, it's taken on the 01 years instead of the 0 years.
So why is that? Why is it 01?
It's just the way they did it. To be honest, I don't really have a good answer to that. I do kind of wonder because the U.S. was first, right? The 1790 census in the U.S. was first, and so I wonder if the British were just like, we're just not going to do it the same way.
Because the British one started in 1811, right? Or was it 1801?
That's a good question. You're quizzing me now. I don't recall the first year. I think it was 1801, though.
Okay.
I don't know that it survived.
Yeah.
But
well, and the first 2 or 3 were sort of like the U.S. Census
with the tick marks. Yep.
Tick marks and
exactly.
Not even people.
Yeah. I like that comment from Eve. I've heard of people getting a provincial health card for their pet. That's great. Okay, so a couple of tips as we work through this. you can search by address, right? We just talked about that. But there is an address search feature on Find My Past. It's the only family history website that offers that tool. So if you're doing house history or one place study, or if you can't find your person because they have an unusual spelling or a different kind of surname that's often misindexed, think about finding their address, which you can usually find in things like electoral registers, and then reverse the search, right? So use that address search on Find My Past. In comparing 1921 to other UK censuses for a second, it's again the first one taken under the Census Act of 1920. It fabulously captured not just their occupation, but their actual employer and the address of the employer. So we can say how many people were working for Cadbury's, for example, which is pretty cool.
Who was the biggest employer at the time in England?
We do have those stats. I don't have that page memorized yet.
You're supposed to have all this.
I know. I'm really sorry. I haven't. It's somewhere around here.
You're saying all these cool, great facts, and I'm like, I want to know this.
What? The best way to learn those things is to read our blog.
Okay.
There you go.
We'll be
so you're going to have a blog on who the top employers in 1921
I wouldn't be surprised if it's already published, to be honest. And it also captured marital status. So this is the first census that recorded divorce in England. And fantastically, some people wrote their beliefs and political opinions around divorce being legal on the state. And this is another great thing about getting the return actually filled out by the household, right? Because there's a lot of people who really did not like the idea of divorce.
This sounds like my husband when we did the 2020 census.
No, 2010.
2010?
Yeah.
2010, he decided to write all over it. He didn't answer directly. And so in his handwriting, he wrote all kinds of crazy commentary.
That is exactly what happened.
Yeah, 7 years from now, look up mine.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll do it. Yeah.
Put that on your calendars after the 1951 release.
They did it in 1911 too. There's plenty of commentary around women's suffrage in 1911. In 1921, there's all sorts of issues around veterans housing and employment and all sorts of stuff.
So I got a question.
I'm going to skip
some of these. I mean, this commentary stuff is interesting because I thought I was the first one who did it, and I find out I'm 100 years too late.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Has there ever been somebody that's gone through and collected some of them, like you mentioned, suffrage or prohibition or anything like that? Has there anybody gone through the whole millions of records for 1911 and hopefully for 1921 to collect all the comments for them so that I don't have to search through all these one at a time?
I don't know.
That would be really interesting.
I know that there have been studies on the 1911 census in terms of like statistical studies. I don't know that anybody's ever published a full comprehensive list of every comment.
Is there a box or anything that you say, hey, extra comments on this record that we can just filter by extra comments on the record?
No, but there is a other keyword, and so if you use that, you can search for things like suffrage. Or suffragette.
I'm going to have to go do that.
Or any other example. I'm going to, okay, so this is what it looks like, right? So this is the census return for 1921. This is just a very typical household return. You have a number of features, right? You've got their names, their relationship, all these things, occupations, their parish, their registration district, their county, their occupation, their employer. In this case, this individual worked for Rolls-Royce. I can't talk anymore. The location of the employer, and the grid off to the far right that indicates the number of children born to the male in the household. All of this in one page.
My goodness.
So it's a very, very comprehensive record. There are a number of different types of census schedules. We have the English household. We've got institutions. We have census returns from Wales. They recorded if they spoke Welsh or English or both. The Channel Islands, Isle of Man, vessels on inland waters or near the coast, vessels not enumerated by the customs office, prisons, institutions, armed forces in a variety of different capacities. All of these are included in the census collection. It's a lot. You have a number of different types of households. So in this instance, like, oh, excuse me, again, when you purchase, oh, I can't go backwards. There we go. Okay. I clicked it twice. So on this page, you get, this is what you get when you go on to Find My Past. And let me say this really clearly. This is not included in the Find My Past subscription. There are additional fees for this census record. And there's a lot of reasons why. And those reasons are out there. But generally speaking, it was the cost of conservation and digitization that we incurred as a business.
And real quick, just because I think somebody asked this question in the chat, but you did say that if you are in England, there's 3 places that you can go and look at all this stuff for free.
That's right.
You just get to flip through stuff by hand.
Well, you look at Find My Past for free.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you get when you make one of those image purchases is the household return, obviously, which looks like this. And you see in the bottom right corner, there's a signature of this individual. The bottom left is a little grid that shows you how many rooms were in the house. So this house had 5 rooms, but 7 people living there, 3 males, 4 females. So you get all of this information that they filled out themselves. And then the green is the enumerator coding the census. So occupation codes and all of that. And you can see actually in the bottom, in the green notes of those last 2 entries for Bertha and Lottie, they're both listed as single, but then it says both alive in green. That's because they're under the age of 16 and both their parents are still alive. So that's that orphanage question being addressed. All of those have been, all the codes and the little notes have been interpreted and processed through the Find My Past publication of the census. So those resources are available on Find My Past. If you want to look up the code, what's an example, 811/6, you can go to our list and see exactly what that means. You also get the front of this. So the household return is a double-sided document. The front is where the address lives. So it's right in that little box to the far left. And then the set of instructions that came with the census, of course, everybody needed a copy of the instructions because it was sent to individual people. You get a picture of the front of the book that the census return is stored in. That gives you the civil parish, the urban district, the registration district, the parliamentary district, etc. All of those kind of organizational, geopolitical facets of information. So if you're looking for that metadata, it's on and it also has the code for the National Archives, RG15/27120. So if you want to compare to the National Archives website, if you're looking for very specific metadata, it's on the cover of the book. It's also included in the transcription that we built, but if you want to look at it for yourself, you can. You get the maps that are included. So this is the same map, same household return, but you'll see on the far right that some of the map is covered by those little pieces of paper. We would fold those up and take another scan. So you get all of the images attached to the household return in that initial purchase. So for that same $3.50, you get all of these images that are attached to the return. You also get the final image that I'll show you is just the registration district itself. These are instructions to the enumerators as they were going around collecting the information, collecting the census returns, and all of their notes in terms of the boundaries and where they were responsible for collecting for. It's a lot. So in that purchase, you get all of these images. Make sure that you take advantage of those because there's a wealth of information in all of this. The other thing that's really important to remember is the date of the census. The census was supposed to be taken on April 25th of 1921, but for a number of reasons, including coal strikes in Northern England, it was delayed until June. The forms still say April because they didn't reprint, right? We're post World War I and resources are scarce. So instead of pulping the forms, they just reused them. So they all are dated April 25th, but it was really taken on June 19th. And that is the information. So this is a view of where your ancestor was on that night specifically. Take a deep breath. All right. How do we use it? How do we get there? If you're on findmypast.com, and I think we're running. Oh, no, I'm good on time. Okay. All right. So On Find My Past, there's a big button right here in the middle. It says Home in the 1921 Census. You can click on that and that will take you straight to the search. You can also click up here where it says 1921 Census. We've tried to make this available to you in as many places as possible. When you click on either of those, this is what you get into. This is what we refer to as the 1921 Census landing page, and this gives you your first look at searching. So you can enter in first name, last name, birth year, or their location in 1921. So if you think they were in, and let's just keep with London because it's easy to pronounce. If you think they're in London, you can type in London in that box and then just hit search. There's also the address search on this tab. So that little green tab off to the side is the address search that we mentioned earlier if you wanted to search by address. If you go to that top menu bar, the navigation bar at the top of the screen, you get the search drop-down menu. There's a number of places here to find the 1921 census and the 1921 census address search. If you use the addresses lower down in the list underneath 1939 register, that will actually give you address search for all collections in the UK Census collection and the 1939 register at the same time. But in this instance, we're talking specifically about 1921. So if we go back to that basic search page, you also have the option to do the advanced search. Now, this is where really the fun comes in, at least for those of us who've been playing around with records for a little while. When we index the census, we indexed literally almost everything on the page. So you can search by a huge number of pieces of information. That's the advanced search form in one, like the web page in one shot. And you can see it's actually been made so small you can't really read it. But it includes items such as the address, other household members, their location in 1921, the vessel they might have been on, the institution they were in, even the piece number from the National Archives, if that's how you choose to search. There are so many variables here that the possibilities of search combinations are almost endless. So if you have someone named John Smith, but you happen to know that their wife's name was Eunice, you can search by John Smith with Eunice in the household and narrow down your search considerably. How many of us have searched for a John Smith or a Brown? My maiden name is Brown. Yeah, I love this. So there's
I have Smith, Young, Long, and Brown on my mother's family tree.
There you go. Yep. Yep. You need this. This is honestly the most comprehensive search screen I think we've ever built as an organization. So this is really, really cool for researching. So this is what it looks like a little bit closer up. I'm searching for one of my family names, Bazanius. They're Russian immigrants. Most of them came to Canada before 1921, but they went through England to get there. So I'm just kind of searching for collateral family members, other cousins, etc. So I'm searching on the surname with name variants clicked because people could spell it a million different ways. And I've selected their birth country as Russia, right? So down here in the bottom. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that Russia, birth country, has that little text in blue to the right of the search box that says browse birth country. That's an important link. And the reason it is because those are the locations we actually identified in the census when we did the transcription. So if you click on that, you get the full list of available locations in terms of birth countries, right? So if you were to search on browse county or browse vessel name, you would see all of the things that we identified in the transcription process. So if you're not sure if it was United States of America or United States or USA or America, you can use that list to really filter those down. So that's my next census tip. Of course, use that other keyword and those locations specifically as we've identified them in the transcription process to help you narrow down those possibilities, especially when you're talking about something with so many different variables like United States, right? Because there's a million different ways to say America. There are a number of locations that were captured in the census: the ecclesiastical and civil parishes, the counties, the registration counties for civil registrations, and those differ from ancient counties or parliamentary counties, just to make it really confusing. There were registration districts, and then there were registration sub-districts. All of this is in the extra information on the search page on Find My Past. Everything I'm telling you, you can read for yourself and go back to repeatedly for that kind of information, context, how to use the census and how to understand what you're looking at when you get it. So on Find My Past, this is what actually looks like on the screen. There's a number of tools here, and there's a couple of really important elements. So at the bottom, there's this little button that says Extra Materials. Use that button. That is where all of those great images are located. So you open up to the household return, and you can navigate in the film strip. To the right is the front page where the address is sitting. But if you click on Extra Materials, you get the cover, the front page of the household return, and all the maps and the plans of divisions that I showed you earlier. Those are all included in your purchase. So make sure you click on Extra Materials. That's where the money is. That's where everything is sitting. It makes it really easy to find all of that. So again, on the front page, that's where the address is located. And there's been a lot of people asking about where is the address on the census. It's on the front of the household return. We also have a text hover feature built into the census viewer. So when you hover your mouse over the text, the handwriting, this is what you see kind of pop up. It helps you translate, interpret some of those messy handwriting moments, right? If your ancestor didn't have very good handwriting. But you can turn this off and on at your leisure. So this little button at the top, actually, it looks like two little pieces of paper stacked up together. You can, when you click on that, you get the little line that goes through it, and that means that turns it off. So if you're looking at the same household return for an hour because you're really studying it and trying to make sure you understand everything, and that little pop-up with the transcription is kind of bugging you, and I say that from personal experience because it started to get a little annoying, you just click the button and it turns it right off. But then you can turn it right back on again if you need some help. And then in the transcription, right? So we've been talking about the images. You purchase the images for $3.50. You can also choose to purchase just the transcription, or you can purchase both together. The transcription is also incredibly detailed. We're trying to make sure that you get as much information as possible. So this is what the household transcription looks like. You see the relationships, the birth year, their age, their birthplace, as noted on the census, their occupation, and their employer. So in this instance, we've got an adopted daughter. We've got a domestic help with the same surname as the adopted daughter. So maybe there's a connection there. We don't know. And then as you scroll down in the transcription, you get all of this other information. And some of this comes from the cover of the book. It comes from the metadata of the census, but we've put it in with the household transcription to make this as kind of a one-stop place for all of the information on that household. So you've got everything from the piece number and the schedule number at the National Archives all the way through their employer and their address. Right at the top of the screen, you see 101 Portland Road. That is the address as it was transcribed in the census. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of cool finds, right? Because this is good stuff. Cornelius,
real quick
please.
Before you go on, since you talked about this. So downloading or buying the record, you're buying the individual records and you get the extra stuff with it. There was a question in the chat about copyright and whether or not people can post that to like Ancestry or Family Search, any of the other sites, WikiTree, for people's profiles. How is the English 2020, not 2021, 1921 census, how does copyright, or how is that protected by copyright, or is it?
So copyright is a little bit of a tricky area to explain in this instance because there's a lot of different variables from the various government agencies. We're dealing with the National Archives and the Office of National Statistics, and then you have Find My Past involved as well. So our terms and conditions are on the site, and generally free and accepted use in terms of general genealogical practices is welcome. And we actually would invite you to share your stories and just tag us actually so that we know you found a cool story because we want to hear them too. So you're free to share the images in your genealogy software on your blog. You can upload it to other websites if that's your choice. But we just ask that you credit Find My Past in that use of that image. Cite your sources. That's right. Absolutely. And then, be aware of the fact that the transcription itself, when it comes to copyright, the transcription is owned by Find My Past because we are the ones who created that transcription. That's my understanding of the copyright. But copyright of the images is a much different scenario and a big gray area. So we won't go into too much detail. But just know that our terms and conditions are published on the site, and you have, as long as you're not scraping the images and sharing a million of them, general good practices is okay.
Now, you said scraping and sharing a million of them. Isn't that going to cost you a couple of
that
$1 million?
That would cost you a little bit of money. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It'd be a pretty significant investment if you really wanted to do that.
Could we slip in this question right here? Who did the transcriptions? Did you answer that?
No, I don't think I talked about that. Transcription. I'm really running out of my ability to talk here. The transcriptions were done by a partner of ours located in India. And we use them all the time, actually. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But if we had gotten them transcribed locally, meaning in England, it would have projects like this would be cost prohibitive, and it never would have gone online. Like, that's just the honest truth.
Okay.
But a very reliable company with very, very high standards.
All right.
And yes, we know there are errors, and yes, we know there are mistakes in the transcription. There always is. But we had a very short window of time between when we were allowed to actually get it transcribed and get it published for security purposes.
Right.
So we will just continue to make those corrections as they are identified. Okay, so a couple of cool finds. Cornelius King Chaplin and his family, his wife Florence, and their very young son James were staying at the Savoy Hotel in London on the night of the census. They're American. They're from Detroit. James is just 1 year old. So they took him on holiday pretty quickly. He is actually a president of a machine tool manufacturing business in Detroit. And I found a great picture of her in one of the newspapers. So I had to use this example just because of that picture, actually. And I like the way it's positioned because it looks like she's looking at herself in the census, which is fun. And thanks for appreciating that. That's good. Okay, a couple. So another census tip for visitors, tourists, check hotels. Right, you want to check those institutional returns, and even people who are local. I heard a story from someone yesterday. I'm trying to remember who it was. And they said they had found their ancestor on the census. The couple, the parents, were staying in a hotel a couple of villages away, taking a little weekend, right? Because it's June and it's the start of the holiday season. The teenage son is enumerated at the home with his girlfriend. Oops. They did later get married, but kind of a fun family story. So check the hotels if you're not seeing them in their immediate address or where you think they should be, because it is the start of the vacation season, right? It's the start of summer break. We have a number of vessels enumerated in the census. This is the USSB SS Canoga. USSB is the United States Shipping Bureau. I learned all about them a couple of days ago as a result of this research. And they actually had vessels kind of all over the world at this period, right? They're trying to improve America's stance in international merchants trading. And so this government agency was developed, and this particular vessel, this captain, had a contract with them. So they are actually in port the night of the census in England. And you can see they have a people from all over the world, right? The navigator, or the master of the vessel, is John Murphy. He's from Newfoundland, which of course is at this time an independent area. It's not actually part of Canada yet. There are people on the ship from America, Mexico, Spain, Norway, Sweden, Iceland, Russia, just kind of all over the place. Passenger vessels, same thing. If they were in port, they were enumerated. So there's a number of travelers here who are actually using a merchant vessel who took passengers on as well, instead of paying voyage on, one of the nicer vessels, maybe, or the more expensive routes. So look in those passenger vessels as well. And again, kind of crew from all over the place, but passengers from around the world as well. We've talked about children's homes, but here's an example. This is from Dr. Barnardo's Village Homes in Essex County. Of course, Barnardo's was one of the most famous individuals involved in the home children movement. Dr. Barnardo, and you can see a number of individuals here, right? Right at the top, Beatrice is just 3 years old, 3 years, 6 months old. Her father is deceased, and she was born in Suffolk. Donald, just the next line down, is just a year old, a year and 10 months. His father is dead, and so forth. So you see all of these children enumerated in these orphanages and children's homes kind of across the country. one of the really unique pieces, I think, of the census is their attempt to document the homeless, the vagrant, the destitute. So in this return, so what happened is the police force would actually, at the end of the census, they would kind of put in those census returns at the end of the book for their area, and they would go out and try and collect all these people up, bring them to the police station, and get their details. So in this case, we have a number of people who are listed as being living in a barn, in a shed, in a tool shed, open air in the field. And this one is one of the more unique ones that I found because it actually lists the name of the property owner. So again, you could go back and research kind of that person who owned the farm and then see if there's any connection between any of these people, right? It's not likely because they're all born in a number of different places, but you never know, right? But this is fan research at its best. Right? This is us being able to find those people who have always been lost to history.
True.
Right? So it's pretty moving. So I forgot I had a close up. There's a little close up, and you can see all the little notes, right? That shows you kind of all of those details. And keep in mind that all of this was indexed. So if you search the words open air on the Find My Past site, you will find these because we captured everything, right? We indexed all of it. And just to end with a quick story, this is Ada Jane Palmer. She married William Scott. They married in New York, but she was born in 1875 in Lancashire. She became a naturalized citizen. So did her husband, Scott. Two of their children, Florence and Mildred, were born in New York. Their son was born in England. And she applied for a passport in 1920, in which she stated that she would be overseas for 2 years. So you're looking at them in the 1910 U.S. Census in Brooklyn. They're found in the 1905 New York State Census as well. There's the household there. There's the passport application where it says that she'll be overseas for 2 years. Now, notably, William did not make this trip. It's just Jane and the children at this point, the girls. And then, of course, we find them in the 1921 census. One of the daughters has employment at this point in England. She's listed as a clerk. And then there's a whole nother family actually living in the household as well. So the house includes 6 rooms, but 8 people. And you see that again down in the bottom corner. And then the signature for Ada. So if you happen to be a descendant of Ada Scott, here you go. I've done her her research in the 1921 census, and of course her son there is born in England. I haven't yet figured out if there was another trip somewhere where the husband came over, or what happened. But Ada herself crossed the ocean at least a dozen times between 1921 and the 1939 register. And you think about that, just wasn't possible in any previous era, right? Mm-hmm. So this combination, this ability to search across the Atlantic is really incredible. In her return, she actually says that she's a resident of England, but she is American through naturalization of her husband. So there you go. If you want to find the naturalization documents, that is your key to finding that family history.
Perfect. Wow.
So it's a lot, right?
It's a lot. It is a lot. And we are almost out of time.
I know.
It's all right. No worries. For those who are Family History Fanatic Extra channel members, the link to the members only video will be in the description box. It's also on the comment page. It's also in the email. And Paul, who's up next, will be joining us in just a few minutes. But
and if you aren't a member, you can join right now by clicking on the join button, and then you'll have access to that.
That's true. Thank you. Sorry, forgot to do that part. I was hoping we could do just 1 or 2 questions before we wrap it up. If you didn't get your question answered today, be sure to put them in the main comment section rather than the live stream comment section. And we'll invite the Find My Past staff to come back and answer the questions periodically. So let's go ahead and tackle one. This one keeps coming up. When is the 1921 census going to be available? Not on Find My Past?
I cannot answer when it will be available on Ancestry because I don't work for them. But Find My Past has exclusive rights on the 1921 census for the next 3 years. So the only place to find it online is on Find My Past for the next 3 years.
So for at least the next 3 years.
There you go.
No one else will have it.
No one else is going to have it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. All right. What's the next one you want
to No, let's go with Murray's question here.
Okay.
And I think you touched on this a little bit, but maybe you can just elaborate. If you know where someone lived in 1911, can I look up that same location in 1921? Is the location or the address is the same between them?
Yeah, generally speaking, there wasn't
Okay.
really a lot of address change across the country, really, in that decade. They had a lot of other things going on that they had to deal with. But yeah, use that address search, and you can use it specifically, like I said, on the 1921 census. Or if you just go to address search in the navigation menu, that will search across all the censuses and the 1939 register at the same time, so you can see that address over the course of history.
Perfect. Okay, and so for those of you who have who want to leverage Find My Past and the free archives and stuff, this comment was there for you.
So Kew London, Manchester Central Library, and the National Library of Wales are the three places that you can access that in it. So if you don't want to buy the images, then plan a vacation to one of those three locations.
Yeah, that's right. And we encourage you to use it and go to those facilities and use all of their collections and, and take advantage. I mean, researching on site is amazing and I miss it. And I can't wait for the pandemic to be over so I can go do it again.
There you go. There you go. And here's the last question. If you weren't able to get your question answered, put it in the main comment section and then folks will Find My Past will periodically come in and answer those. So here's the last question of the day.
So is there a way that I can offer corrections to the transcriptions without having to buy the transcripts? So just searching, you can see that there's some mistranscribed names.
Yep. So this is, to be really transparent about it, this is not something that we actually anticipated. So we didn't build the function. Unfortunately, we just didn't. It's, when you stare at something for 3 years, sometimes you miss some things, right? So you can send those to us, but just know that the team in the background is working furiously to build this functionality so that we can make that available to people. That's my understanding at the current moment, although I haven't seen any of the recent messages for the last 2 hours. So I'm a little out of date on this. But yeah, you can send those transcriptions to us. We will constantly be correcting the information that's available in the transcription. And we'll take those comments and feedback as much as you're willing to share.
Awesome. I'm going to slip in this last one because I think it does apply to images. So for the image downloads, do you get the full page with the record or just the part of the page that has the one record on it?
Not really sure I understand the question in full, but when you purchase the record, if you purchase the image, you can download, print, attach to your tree. You can do any of those things with all of the images attached in that purchase. So that's the front of the household return, the household return itself, the maps, the cover of the book, and all of that extra information that we showed you. So when you make that purchase, those are yours. You have bought them, and you can download them at your pleasure.
And awesome. And you just to clarify here, what you said is you're talking household. So if you're just interested in one person who's the nephew of somebody, you're getting the whole household that nephew's living in. So there might be another half a dozen or a dozen people.
Absolutely. If they're on the
image, you don't
image,
have to buy it for every single person.
You are buying a household enumeration. Yeah.
Perfect.
And do you know, just real quick, how many households there are? So if I want to buy the whole thing, how many millions I need?
I don't know.
Okay.
A lot. You need a lot.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for all your time and your hard work. I think you just blew our minds with the possibilities here. Find My Past has done an excellent job. And so for the next 3 years, if you want to access the 1921 census, then you need to go to Find My Past. And now, one quick clarification, because I don't want to say this wrong. Can you search the index part for free and then make your purchases? Or do you need to be subscriber and then? That's the part I don't understand.
Yeah, 100% correct, actually, the way you said it. You can search the collection for free. You have to register on the site. You have to be a registered user, but you do not have to pay a subscription fee to search the census.
Perfect.
And then you purchase the images and the transcriptions independently of the subscription. So you do not have to be a subscriber of Find My Past on a monthly or annual basis to access the 1921 census.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I just want to tell you who is going to be on tap for next month for I'm going to mute you there, Jen, for a second, Jen. So next month, our special guest is Krista Cowan, and she's going to be talking a lot about African-American research strategies so that you can celebrate Black History Month. So that's what's going to happen. And whenever we have a special guest, we're going to have double headers. We're going to have the free one like you're seeing right now, and then we're going to have the members only. So thank you so much to Find My Past for joining us today, and we'll see you in just 5 minutes, or because I got to do a potty break. We'll do 5 minutes, and then we'll start our live show for the members only. See you later.